6 months ago, I made the decision to settle here in Nairobi, Kenya, and start a new life here after having traveled the African continent full-time for almost 8 months, together with my 2 children, while homeschooling them, or some people call it world schooling. And I must honestly say it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Not just to travel the African continent and explore different places, see how life is like in different parts of the continent, but also the decision to settle here in Nairobi, Kenya. And today I want to share with you 5 reasons why I love this country so much and why I truly believe that you will love it as well. My name is Wayne. If you're new to this channel, welcome, karibu, and salam salam. On this channel, Plan Back to Africa, I share my journey of leaving behind Germany to travel the African continent full time. I'm a cultural anthropologist and historian in African studies, but I always knew I don't want to spend the rest of my life in academia because it can get really boring. And so I invested into the short-term rental business here on the African continent and built myself multiple home bases with the help of Airbnb. And that was also one of the best decisions of my life because it allows me to pursue the lifestyle that really fulfills me, a location-independent business that I can run from anywhere in the world while I do the things that really fulfill me, like teaching African history and culture. And that is why I also started this YouTube channel. So for those who follow me, thanks for your support and for all the love that you show me all the time. I appreciate you and I see you. And I don't know why, but this morning I woke up with a feeling of immense gratitude. I cannot describe it. I cannot believe how blessed I am. Waking up in a beautiful home, in such a beautiful place. It's so important really to count your blessings. I know maybe I'm talking too much about gratitude. It's Sunday, you know, Sunday is always a special and a blessed day and always a good day to, reflect on how far you have come already. So yeah, now without any delay, let's dive straight into it. The first thing that I want to speak about that I particularly appreciate and that I'm so grateful for is not the weather, not the landscape, the beautiful environment, but the people. You know, the people in Kenya are one of the most beautiful people I've ever met. One of the most welcoming people. You will immediately feel like you have come home. It's very easy to blend in, and it doesn't matter where you come from, whether it's another African country, whether it's from the US, from South America. They embrace everyone, and that's so beautiful to see. And also, another thing that I've noticed that I came to appreciate, a thing that I have observed over the last month of creating content about Kenya, is that the Kenyan people are extremely humble. I made a video, I think it was like 6 months ago, where I compared life in Kenya versus life in South Africa. Because at that time, I was really unsure whether I should settle in South Africa or in Kenya, another country that I love dearly. South Africa is also a beautiful place to stay. Anyway, I tried to be as objective as possible, and the comment section really touched my heart. Kenyans are the most humble and most sweetest souls out there. They didn't feel attacked or like they didn't take my criticism personally. But instead, guess what they said? Please, sister, don't compare us to South Africa. South Africa is our big brother. That's really something we aim to become one day, such a grand nation. And they expressed so much love for their South African brothers and sisters. But what struck me the most was how humble the Kenyans were. They know where their country is lacking, where their country is behind. They are not trying to sugarcoat anything. You know, being critical of yourself and seeing and recognizing and acknowledging your own failures, right? That's the path forward. That's how progress looks like. Understand that there's always room for growth, room to do better, you know? And I see a beautiful future for this country with people who are humble, who love their country, and who are so proud of their country. And then another thing that I really love about the Kenyan people is they are very supportive. So whenever you need help, they immediately step in. Of course, there will always be people who will try to take advantage of you, but that's the case everywhere in the world, right? You just have to move smart and to, use your brain. But I don't know who remembers, but in one of my last episodes where I gave an update about life and the challenges of life here in Nairobi, Kenya, after being here for 6 months, I shared a story of how I got scammed by some vendors who sold new sinks to me. Well, I ordered for new sinks. Turned out they delivered one new sink and one used one. And also, thank you so much to my dear Kenyan brothers and sisters for the beautiful comments, for your understanding and for showing empathy. I know this happens to most of us, whether you are Kenyan or whether you are a foreigner. It can happen to any one of us to get scammed. However, my landlord luckily stepped in, and I'm so grateful for the support. I was able to get a new sink, so just a little update, this problem was solved. The second thing that I'm ultimately grateful for, and one of the main reasons why I decided to raise my children here in Kenya, here in Nairobi, is because the schools teach your children to become God-fearing people. It's something that is completely lacking in the Western world. When I was going to school in Germany, back in the days, 20, 30 years ago in primary school, it was normal that we would start each class with a prayer, or that we pray before having lunch and breakfast. But nowadays, the Western societies have become godless countries. All they believe in is money, success, individualism, what have you. And, it really touched my heart. And I must say, the international school that I chose is not even a school that put a special focus on religion, right? It's not a religious school. But regardless, they teach the children to be God-fearing, to be grateful. Every time before they have lunch, they have a prayer where they thank God and ask God to bless their food. And it's so beautiful that this is something that also my children carry home, so that whenever we have lunch here, they pray and they ask God to bless their food, and they have become much more grateful. Yeah, that's really one thing that I love so much about being here in Nairobi, to have so many people around you and the systems that value Christian beliefs. And it doesn't matter whether you are Christian, Muslim, or Hindu. There are so many spaces that allow you and your children to reconnect with God, And yeah, that's so beautiful. I'm very grateful for that. Another thing that I'm so grateful for, and that also has to do with the school system, and why I'm so happy to be able to raise my children here, is that they teach a subject called global perspective here in Kenya, starting from primary school. So for those of you who have never heard about the subject global perspective, like the name says, students deal with topics that are global. This can be politics, this can be things related to climate change, this can be cultural topics that teach the children how everything in this world, on our earth, is connected. And it's very interesting because when I was in Germany, I was working as a trainer and educator in the field of global perspective. And because they have now realized in Germany how important this subject is, right? And to teach the children, well, I must say they start from the 8th grade, very late compared to Kenya, where they start from the 1st grade. They came to realize how important it is to give students a global perspective, to broaden their horizon, to see what's happening outside of Germany, and how things that are happening, let's say in Canada, influence things that happen in the Congo. And so we were hired and paid to go to the schools and to teach the children how technology and devices that they use in their everyday life, such as their smartphone, their TV, their fridges, what have you, are directly connected to the exploitation of children in the Congo, to the exploitation of resources, the exploitation of the people in the Congo. These are the things that we were teaching them. And it's so beautiful to see that they are teaching these things already starting from primary school here in Kenya. And of course, not everything is perfect here, at least from my perspective. As someone who has extensively researched the history of the African continent and or I should rather say the histories, because there's always multiple memories of the past, right? Depending on who you ask. And just generally about colonialism. And so I remember a few weeks ago, I released a video where I spoke about how disappointed and shocked I was to learn that Queen Victoria, right, which was a textbook colonizer, is still being glorified in the history books in the school of my children. And then I've got many responses under this video where people told me, oh, you put your children into a British school, what do you expect? Of course, they will teach British history. And I agree with you to a certain extent. First, it's not a British school. It's a Kenyan-owned private international school with 99.9% Black students, okay? Some people said send them to a Kenyan school so they don't learn this historical nonsense, right? But you must understand, to be able to send your child to a local Kenyan private school, right? The children have to speak a certain level of Kiswahili, which my children don't. And so there are not many options. And I understand, like, when you enroll your children in a school that teaches the Cambridge curriculum, that they will work with the material from Cambridge, right? But the thing is, I was maybe hoping that at least the teachers, who are also Black Kenyans, right, would at least deal with these topics in a more critical way. Because after all, we still hold a certain level of power, right? But after all, let me tell you something. We cannot expect the teachers of our children to do all the work. We as parents, we have a lot of work to do, and it's our job to correct, to help them to decolonize their minds and to unlearn certain things and to give them a different perspective and be critical and just guide them along the way and be a teacher at home as well. Now, let's get to the next point. The third thing that I'm so grateful for and that I really love about Nairobi and Kenya in general is that I've noticed that many women, girls here embrace their natural hair. And that is why I decided, which would have been more or less unthinkable if I had decided to stay in Germany or in the Netherlands, to allow my daughter to have her sister locks. She wanted to have them for such a long time. Sister locks, they look so beautiful, especially on small girls, and so beautiful to see so many Kenyan women rocking these sister locks. And I learned it's a relatively new trend that has started here in Kenya in the last 3 years. There are so many hair salons all over Nairobi where you can get sister locks for an affordable and fair price. I think we pay to refresh them around 4,000 shilling, which is around $30 US, and we retwist every 2 to 3 months. And I'm so grateful and I'm so happy for my daughter that we finally live in an environment where natural black hair is not only seen, is not only celebrated, but also not viewed as unprofessional. Like when I was in Germany or in many parts of the Western world, where many African women, Black women, straighten their hair with relaxers, which is so harmful for your health, you know? And so it's just something that I'm immensely grateful for. Now, let's get to the next point, a point that I came to appreciate even more over the last couple of months since I live here in Nairobi. I always knew how diverse Nairobi and the country in general is. But living here has showed me that the people really live together in peace, right? It's so diverse. You can be in a neighborhood. Let's take the estate that I moved to right now, where I'm living in. You don't see the same level of segregation like you see in other countries, like what I've witnessed in South Africa, right? Where I spent a week in a particular area of Cape Town, and the only Black people that I saw were the workers at restaurants, in bars, and in cafes. And the rest was 99% white. I feel uncomfortable with this. I feel this is not normal. It's not normal in Germany. It's not normal in the US, because by now, most of these countries are diverse, have a big population of migrants, right? And it surely is not normal on the African continent to see areas where 99% of the residents are white. Of course, you also have areas and neighborhoods here in Nairobi that are predominantly white, such as Karen, for instance, right? But you will still find a considerate amount of wealthy Kenyans living among them. And the estate where I'm living at right now is also very diverse, even though the majority are Kenyans from the upper middle class, I would say, but you also have Americans, you have Germans, you have Japanese, Koreans, you have Ethiopians. And honestly, I wouldn't also have a problem with living in a neighborhood that is made up of 99% Kenyan people. But I feel there is something beautiful in diversity. You know, one day, that was in the end of last year, I did something crazy. I started my day in Chinatown. We went for shopping in Chinatown, which is around Kilimani, and we had breakfast there. We, you know, even if it's just a little bit, we got the chance to immerse ourselves a little bit into the Chinese culture, be surrounded by many Chinese people. They have a big population here in Nairobi and in Kenya in general. And then we moved on to the next stop and went to a neighborhood that has many, many Ethiopian and Eritrean people, and had lunch in an Ethiopian restaurant, had a coffee there. You know, you are in Kenya, you are in Nairobi, but for a moment I felt like I'm in Addis Ababa, to smell the scent of incense, of freshly roasted coffee and freshly baked injera, and seeing so many Ethiopian people. For a moment, I felt like I'm home. And then we moved on to the next destination, which was Eastleigh, a predominantly Somali community, because Somalis, ethnic Somalis, also make up a big chunk of the Kenyan population. And we had camel meat there for dinner in one of the most famous restaurants called Kilimanjaro. I can really recommend it. If you ever get the chance to visit Nairobi, please try out their camel meat in the Kilimanjaro restaurant. I was first hesitant myself, but you will love it. I even tried camel milk, but I must honestly say it was not really my cup of tea. But it was so beautiful, you know, to just walk through the streets and have the feeling you're immersing yourself again into a complete new world and culture. And then, as if that was not enough, we ended the day in Westlands at the Diwali festival, which is the New Year's celebration of the Hindu community, where we saw a huge firework, had fantastic food, and also were immersed again in a completely different culture. All these cultures within one day in one city is incredible. And I love this about Nairobi. And it was also a beautiful experience for my children. Honestly, I was overwhelmed in the evening and I was so tired, but it was absolutely worth it. Now, let's get to the last point, the most important point, in my opinion. What is life if there is no peace? And that is something that I came to appreciate so much about living in Nairobi and in Kenya in particular. The fact that it's a very, very peaceful country. Now, let's forget for a while that there have been protests, right, which ended violently, that speaking out against the system or speaking out against the government is not safe at all. In fact, it can be very dangerous, right, especially for Kenyans. So I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. What I'm trying to say is that the vibe overall is very peaceful. You don't have violent armed ethnic conflicts like we see in Ethiopia. You can easily travel across the border by car to countries like Uganda, to countries like Ethiopia, Tanzania, which is just a 4 to 5 hours drive away from Nairobi. You can drive across the whole country, right? And I would say I've seen quite a lot of this country. Not enough though, and I can't wait to really explore more of this beautiful country and share my favorite places with you and inspire you to also, you know, make your own experiences. But from what I've seen so far, I must say this is definitely one of the most peaceful countries with one of the most peaceful people that I've ever encountered in my life. That's something that is so remarkable, and that's also something that my mother noticed. I flew her in a month ago from Germany because I wanted to show her, your daughter made it. She finally found her place. And I want to end this episode by showing you what my mom had to say about Kenya. كينيا كم إخي واو يا يا كم تتصبي خيا بالطعم تتصبي ناي بلبه يا لملم عدي سلام زلوة
سلام إثيوبيا خمدي أتتخللنا
دسم بلد كسبنو بمكينة خيب خدم بلتسجر السودان يكون إرترا يكون صوماليا
سلام وين بالي سلام من ندلي يأكد
آمين
أملاك وعلي تعرف أن
آمين
يأكد.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you think in the comments, how you feel about living in Nairobi and in Kenya in general, and if you could imagine to settle here. Bye.